I do, and what every farmer does out here, is we harvest sunshine and we put it in a form that people can use. You think of these fields as giant solar collectors, and we're collecting that sunshine and creating something that people can use. And so in our case, a lot of this is corn and soybeans and other grain crops, which in turn can be fed to livestock or other food products. But in order to accomplish our goal of harvesting that sunshine, we have to perform certain tasks. And in order to do that responsibly with the least environmental impact, we have to be very precise and very prescriptive about how we use our inputs. So things like fertilizer, things like other pesticides, when you can measure and document what you're doing, then you can manage it better. And so the internet is a perfect way to accomplish that, because it gives us the tools not only for that precision, but also for the documentation. And we get a report card basically, and so we can improve every single year on what we've been doing.
And that key word that we hear so much about is sustainability. You and I as farmers, we've already did the no-till, and we've done the cover crops, and people are used to doing that. And of course that doesn't fit every region of the country, but those low-hanging fruit of being to do conservation and climate smart farming, we've already captured that. The next step for us to continue to make us more friendly to our environment is that precision technology that we need, and just like you talked about for our listeners, that is going to help us move into the future and be even more friendly to our land and our natural resources, even though we've done a lot over many decades. Well, hello and welcome back to Farmside Chat. I'm Zippy Duval, president of American Farm Bureau, and I am the host for today's podcast. I have an awesome opportunity to tell the farmers and ranchers story from around the country and let our listeners learn or inform themselves about what's going on in rural America and out on the farm, talking about safety and sustainability and the things that we do to provide the food and fiber for the families of American people and a lot of the world too. A lot of today's tools that are critical for modern day farming and climate smart farming on our farms and ranches are controlled or operated through broadband. And today we're going to talk about broadband. Just to give you a little information from USDA, 29% of farms across America do not have broadband, according to USDA, and the Federal Communications Commission says 39% of rural America lacks access to broadband, compared to 4% in the urban areas of our country. So this is an opportunity for us to talk about, broadband and how critical it is to rural America. And it really is not a luxury anymore. It's a necessity for us all over our country, whether it be urban or country, in rural America. So we're going to have a great conversation today. At American Farm Bureau, we work real hard here in Washington to advocate for the needs of the rural American farmers. And we do it not just by ourselves, but we use the policy from our grassroots members that are farming out across America, and our coalitions and partnerships and relationships we have with other organizations, whether it be a commodity group or whether it be a business that we might be. So today we have two great guests with us. They are working. One is a fellow with American Connection Corps, and we're going to talk to him a little bit. He is based in Redwood County, Minnesota, and Bruce Tiffany from Redwood County too, who is a grain farmer and on the board of Lead for Minnesota. So I welcome y'all to the show and look forward to our conversation about this important issue around broadband in rural America. So I'm going to start with you, Bruce. I know that you're a grain farmer there. Tell us a little bit about your farm and maybe a little bit of your farming history and how you got connected to lead for Minnesota.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here and getting to meet all of your listeners. Our family has been in the area since 1886. My grandfather emigrated from Scotland, and shortly after he got here, he was 3 years old. Shortly after he got here, his mother died, and there were 7 kids in the family, and they were some of them were farmed out or adopted by other families in the area. So it was a humble beginning, and we've been active in the community ever since. As a matter of fact, Farm Bureau has been active in Minnesota for 101 years, and I'm proud to say that our family has been active in Farm Bureau for a long, long time.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate every membership we got across this great country and the farmers and ranchers that are involved, especially in our policy making. So I'm going to go to you, Patrick Garry, who is a fellow with American Connection Corps. Tell us a little bit about your background. I read a little bit that you're a recent graduate of Notre Dame.
Yes, that's right. And I just want to start out by thanking you for having Bruce and I in this conversation today, and to be a voice for rural broadband and to further our efforts in these rural communities. Um, coming from Notre Dame, that's really where my engagement in rural America began, and that's a little strange for people to hear about that. And um, I'm from the Twin Cities. I'm a bit of a city boy, and when I went to Notre Dame, I was pursuing a degree in industrial design, and I began to become very interested in agriculture and looking at innovation and looking about all this technology that's being collated and brought together. And I began to work on projects. That's one great thing about being in a design environment, is that you get to work on projects that you wouldn't otherwise get to do, and you get to have a bit of autonomy in the learning that you get to pursue. And I worked on projects with grain bin engulfment and entrapment, looking at tile systems and creating tile protection units and tile flags and different things like that. I also worked on um, livestock equipment as well. And so through this process, I really gained an appreciation for agricultural life and the industry as a whole. And while these projects in college, typically they're innovation theaters. They're not a true to market solution that is perfectly applicable. But that exercise and that practice of these skills really helped me hone in and learn a lot of the problems that not only farmers face, not only people that live in rural communities, not only businesses in rural communities face. And it just allowed me to really engross myself into this culture that you from a university perspective isn't really present. And my you're probably wondering, how did this guy get introduced to agriculture? And it really goes back to my father's side of the family. And my roots are in southern Minnesota, and it was in Pleasant Prairie Township, where the Garry name was established. And my grandfather, he owned and operated grain elevators throughout the southern part of the state. And he owned and operated the last privately owned grain elevators in the state as well. And so, through this, I spent a lot of time with my grandfather and my grandmother, and I saw how, reflecting back on their past, how they raised 8 children in a rural community, and how these were people that were thinking big ideas. They were looking to change the world. And for me, when I left the university, I had different job options, and whether that was to go out to LA or Dallas. But to me, I wanted to be impactful, and I wanted to have a presence in a community in which I can see my direct efforts coming to bear. And so when I was approached with the American Connection Corps, and we'll get into that a bit later, um, it really seemed to click with my values and what I was looking to do as a young person who was kind of getting their start in the world.
So, Redwood County, tell me, get my bearings. Where is it at in the state? Middle or north? Or?
So we're in the southwest part of the state of Minnesota. Basically, if you 90 miles from South Dakota border and 90 miles from the Iowa border. So in the southwest part of the corner of the state.
So I admit I travel a lot across the country, and a lot of times I take time to look at my map and see where I'm at in the state. A lot of times I don't. But I have actually been in Redwood County several times to the Farmfest and farm show, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But today we're going to kind of focus in on the American Connection Corps and the program that is spearheaded by Land O'Lakes, and they have several partners in there. We, as American Farm Bureau, are one of those partners because I know a lot of our state farm bureaus worked with Land O'Lakes back during the pandemic and opened up their parking lots and their offices around the county offices to help people be connected, especially children in schools. So we've been partners with Land O'Lakes on several issues around broadband. I understand this program put 50 fellows across the country on a 2-year stint. I saw, Patrick, I understand that you're one of those. So could you both tell us how y'all got connected with American Connection Corps?
Sure. Yeah, like I said, coming out of college, I wasn't really sure on where my career path would take me. I didn't know if I wanted to go into a traditional consulting type role. I didn't know if I wanted to go work in corporate industry in some way. And I actually, it was a few days before graduation, I got a call from our executive director, Benya Kraus, and she reached out to me, and she shared with me the vision that she created for the American Connection Corps, and specifically Lead from Minnesota. And it really seemed to click with what I was looking for as a young person, to go into these rural communities. And what we're looking to do here in the American Connection Corps is to bring our perspective to bear on some of the most pressing issues that are facing these rural communities. And with that, it's really, we're looking to bridge the digital divide. We look at broadband as such a necessity to positioning these communities for success in the future. And with COVID and everything, and the pandemic, it's become more and more of a necessity to engage in the greater world. And nowadays you can live wherever you want to and work from wherever you want to. And as a county and as a community, we don't want to miss out on this bus. And if the American Connection Corps, um, they're the goal is to put young people into positions where they can make impact and they can make change. And we can take these communities that greater America looks at as, oh, they're nostalgic, and they're, it's your old, yeoman farmer on a rinky-dink tractor. And the thing is as you both know, Bruce and President Duval, that's not the case. We want to foster areas of innovation. We want to build communities that are leading the way in technology and growth and innovation. And Bruce always, it reels me in, and he says, we're not building, Las Vegas here, Patrick. And but it's taking these community values that we have in bringing them to a national scale and letting our perspective come to bear on the most pressing problems of our time. So
So thank you, Patrick, and you brought to light an observation that I've been making when I'm on Capitol Hill and with the administration is, there's twofold challenges that we have in rural America. One, our rural communities are drying up and people are moving out and not coming back. and our young people go off to college where they are connected, they have internet connection, and they're not going to leave that luxury and necessity to come back to our rural communities. So rural broadband is the tool that can
Exactly.
revitalize rural America, just like bringing power to our farms and our rural community did back in the 30s and 40s. And then Bruce on our side of it, and I was saying a little bit earlier, when I go to Farmfest and see the latest tools that farmers and ranchers have at their fingertips, a lot of those tools require broadband connections. So why don't you share with us a little bit about what those tools that we see at that great farm show at Farmfest, what are we lacking to be able to utilize some of that?
Sure. Interestingly, so Farmfest has been in Redwood County for quite a few years, and as everything, it has evolved. So the latest and greatest in farming technology is showcased in a place like that. And so as more of that becomes connected to the internet connection at the Farmfest site is quite important. And a lot of the exhibitors were complaining that they could not demonstrate their products because there was such a lousy internet connection. So a lot of effort had to be done to get high-speed internet and broadband to the Farmfest site. Now, that being said, that's one tiny spot in the county. So I happen to be sitting in the Redwood County Government Office Building because the internet connection at my home probably isn't as reliable enough just to do this interview. But on my farm, when I look at what I need to perform the tasks that I need to do, well, first of all, let me back up. What I do and what every farmer does out here is we harvest sunshine and we put it in a form that people can use. You think of these fields as giant solar collectors, and we're collecting that sunshine and creating something that people can use. And so in our case, a lot of this is corn and soybeans and other grain crops, which in turn can be fed to livestock or other food products. But in order to accomplish our goal of harvesting that sunshine, we have to perform certain tasks. And in order to do that responsibly with the least environmental impact, we have to be very precise and very prescriptive about how we use our inputs. So things like fertilizer, things like other pesticides, when you can measure and document what you're doing, then you can manage it better. And so the internet is a perfect way to accomplish that because it gives us the tools not only for that precision, but also for the documentation. And we get a report card basically, and so we can improve every single year on what we've been doing. So in order for us to accomplish some of our goals, not only for us, but also for the citizens of Minnesota and the U.S. and all around the world, I have to have internet connection. So in my planter tractors, we have two of them. In order to get those things to work properly, we have three different devices that are connected to the internet. And then at harvest time, the combines have two devices that have to be connected. And throughout the year, and we raise kind of a niche type of deal, but we raise hundreds of different soybean varieties. So there's lots of field scouting and note taking. And so no matter where you are in the field, at any time during the growing season, there could be several devices that somebody's using out there. So if we can't do that properly, we can't do our job accurately and in a sustainable way. And therefore, we can't reach the goals of the American consumer.
That's exactly right, Bruce. And that key word that we hear so much about is sustainability. You and I as farmers, we've already did the no-till and we've done the cover crops, and people are used to doing that. And of course, that doesn't fit every region of the country, but those low-hanging fruit of being to do conservation and climate-smart farming, we've already captured that. The next step for us to continue to make us more friendly to our environment is that precision technology that we need. And just like you talked about for our listeners, that is going to help us move into the future and be even more friendly to our land and our natural resources, even though we've done a lot over many decades. And we can't forget about where we come from, but we can't stop looking ahead and trying to find how we do even a better job every time. Patrick, I know that there are certain projects that you types of projects that you're all involved in through this rural connection. So, can you tell us some of those projects and how is it working out there in Redwood County?
Yeah, well, just to give us a little context into Redwood County, currently now we rank 85 out of 87 counties in connectivity, and that's a ranking that comes out from the state. So we are at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to internet connection. And a big part of that is understanding the history of these communities and understanding, why are we in this position, and what decisions were made in the past, and frankly what decisions weren't made in the past. And so what we're looking at is we view broadband as a way to keep the lights on for rural America. Broadband to us is not our saving grace. It's not going to answer every single one of our problems. Rather, what it's going to do is it's the linchpin to rural America. So many of our problems stem from poor internet connection and poor connectivity, and it results, Zippy, to echo your comments of, we're losing people. We're dealing with brain drain. We're dealing with an aging population. All these things that feed into the overall decline, if you will, of these communities can really be traced back to broadband. And for our county in particular, we view broadband as one of the best investments as far as return on investment. How are we, as far as state and government projects go, it's what is going to pay the most to our community members, what's going to pay the most to our constituents, and how are we going to serve the most constituents? And to us, that's broadband. And with a road or a bridge, you're not going to serve everyone in a capacity from a commerce perspective, or from serving daycare needs and different how are we going to care for senior citizens or health care. And so we look at broadband as what connects us and what holds us all together in Redwood County. And in a big push that we've been trying to sustain here and to have is there's a cultural shift that, as an American Connection Corps and as a county, that we're trying to call in. And what that is in rural communities, oftentimes we've discovered there's an attitude of it's good enough, or it works for us now. And what we're trying to say is, in order to be innovative, in order to be bold, we need to have the proper infrastructure that's set up for the next 40 years and for the next generation. And with that, we've in Redwood County, we've taken a very bold stance to where we want to go into the future. And so what we did with a group of community members and community members from all across our county, we established a vision statement, and that outlines that every person, every resident, and every business in Redwood County will have access to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet connection delivered by a committed community private internet service provider through a fiber network. And that fiber network for us is so crucial because there's so many technologies that are out there, and we view fiber as the most future-proof solution to our community. It's currently now our infrastructure that we have it's maxed out, and while it may have limped us through the pandemic, it really didn't address the needs, and it doesn't that current infrastructure we have doesn't allow for growth to happen into our community. And that's what we're really looking for. We're looking for something that, um, the the day after we get broadband is where we think the real community growth is going to happen, and where we can really have an impact into um, the world. And what excites me the most about this initiative is it requires our community to be bold. It requires us to determine the size of our aspirations, the scope of our mission, and the extent of our impact on the world. And so we say that we want to be bold today so we can be bold tomorrow. And we believe in Redwood County in a fiber future. And, while there is a myriad of different technologies that can achieve that, we feel that we're looking to, in a way, shoot for the moon. And we think a fiber initiative to every farm site, to every business, to every home in town, it's going to stretch our community. And it's going to, it's our moonshot. And it's going to make it so that we have to sacrifice, and we have to prioritize things, and we have to say, um, this is something that we value as a collective, and we think it will bring out the best in our community. And, for so long, rural to our community, rural America has largely been neglected. It's been neglected in technology. It's been neglected in resources, in education, and in healthcare. And we view this as a way to fundamentally change the status quo of these communities. And um, as a county, it's a bold undertaking, but we're looking to be bold today so we can be bold tomorrow.
So Patrick, that's a great goal to have, and I know that the barrier is providing that broadband technology to our rural communities. But every time you go and try to achieve something like that, there's always a personal side of challenges. So what challenges are you seeing from maybe local governments, individuals in your
Mhm.
community? A lot of people resist change, they resist growth, they resist new people coming in. Tell me, talk about a little bit of that. Have you seen much of that, or have you seen a community that's really welcoming?
I think to answer that, Zippy, I think every initiative has its roadblocks. Every initiative has its challenges. And anything that you believe is worthwhile fighting for isn't gonna come easy. And we've had some great community partnerships and some great support from local government, and from farmers like Bruce, and from institutions in businesses. And but still, in the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make a cultural shift, and that shift is painful, and it causes people to challenge their beliefs, to challenge their values. And it really goes back to the fact of, in rural communities, they're far different than, trying to make a difference in a city, or trying to make a difference in a large urban area. These are people that you live with, you go to church with, you eat at the same restaurants, you shop at the same grocery stores. And with that, there's no real uh removal. It's when you walk out of the room, it's not like you're going home really to a different neighborhood. We all live in a similar geographic environment. And with that, I think so much of what my work does comes down to building relationships, and building relationships in which you can establish trust, you can establish um, that common vision, and communicating your shared goals and your shared vision. And with that, um, sure, there are roadblocks, and sure, there's an attitude of, oh, it works for us today. But part of that is on us to share with people, what can fiber do to really change their life. It's not about watching Netflix. It's not about um, being able for your kids to go on and game for hours. And it's not about all the other things that come along with the internet. Rather, it's about bringing opportunity to these communities. And it's a it's a myriad of resources that become available at your fingertips, and it's getting people to understand and to be excited and to really advocate. What we have in Redwood County is we have advocates, and these are people that they don't have to be experts on fiber, but they care. They care about the future of these communities, and they want our community to. They understand that what's happened in the past, business as usual isn't going to get us where we need to be. And so that's something that has really been amazing about the Redwood community and southern Minnesota in general.
So we talked about revitalization of rural America, especially there in Redwood County. Bruce, you and I are from a generation that in an industry where we see the average age of the farmer who's providing 3 meals a day for everybody in America and part of the world. That age is getting older and older and older. So let's talk about bringing young people, not just to rural America, but bringing them back to the farm. I'd love to hear your perspective on that and how technology might help that.
Well, I think it's important for every generation to look at the strengths and the values that the other generations have, and so I think the beauty of agriculture, and particularly in a family situation, multiple generations are working together and learning from each other. And so I've had the pleasure to work alongside my father. My oldest son is in farming, and I get to work alongside grandkids, and we're all learning from each other, and we're working toward common goals. And my family isn't much different than the other families. And so when you have a functioning community, there's no shortage of opportunities for leadership. To have a good functioning community, everybody has to pitch in and do something. And so whether you're on a church board or you're on school board or you're a county commissioner or whatever it happens to be, good leadership is key. And those leadership skills need to be developed and fostered. So it's important to make sure that there isn't a leadership vacuum. And things like 4-H and FFA, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, you name it, those are safe places for students in particular to learn and develop leadership skills and put them into practice. So for me, I've always had a passion for that sort of thing because it has opened a lot of doors and opportunities for me. My life is much better for having stepped up and gone beyond the easy route. And so I think it's important to allow the next generation and the next generation after that to have those same opportunities. So as an older generation now, and I hate to say that, I look in the mirror, I still find myself, it's hard to believe that I'm calling myself an older generation, but we have to not only develop those leaders, but we also have to allow them to lead. It's important for us to step back, allow them to lead, and support their efforts. Because if we don't, all of a sudden you find a deal where some communities have this leadership vacuum and nothing gets done, and then they struggle for a while until they can get their feet under them again. And I don't want that to be my community. On my farm, because I live close to town, we've opened up the opportunity for young people to start a farming career. People have believed in my goals all through my career. And actually, the farm that I live on, I started renting that when I was 11 years old. My older brother was 13, I was 11, and non-relative neighbors somehow, I have no idea what the agreement was, but approached my dad and turned out that an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old started farming, renting land. And so I've had the good fortune to have people believe in my dreams and support me And I take it very seriously to help pass that opportunity along.
Well, that's great, Bruce. You're exactly right. I remember we talk about leadership piece first. Uh, I remember my dad saying, "You got if you want to make a difference in your community, you got to get outside your fence row. You can't just stay here on the farm." And that led me to my rural electric board. Served on it. I was a county commissioner, and then ended up being chair of a county commission. I mean, those were some of the most rewarding, almost no pay jobs that I ever took, but they were so rewarding because you were helping your fellow man and people in the community. Now, I don't know if you've read Patrick's little bio, but he referenced you as a host and a mentor, and you're talking about mentorship that I think is just one of the greatest things, opportunities we have as, let's don't say older generation, but older people, and and to be able to mentor somebody into agriculture. I have a young man because my son's a veterinarian. He's on the road doing embryo transfer work with large animals. He ends up back there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and helps us on the farm. But I have a young man that wanted to farm, and I'm helping him purchase his farm while he's running mine and his at the same time. So we have to, as farmers, do exactly what you're saying. We got to continue on bringing young people back and giving them an opportunity because you and I both know that without family involved, the money we have to borrow, the land that was needed to farm, it is just almost impossible for a young man to do it on his own. So mentorships and bringing young people back and helping them get a start is really important to me personally, and it sounds like it is to you, Bruce, and I salute you for that. So, Patrick, we want to thank you for what you're doing in Redwood County, and Bruce, I want to thank you for what you're doing to not just mentor him, but be a partner with him to make those exciting things happen in your community. And I would say that in all 50 fellows that are with the American Connection Corps all across America have that desire to make that community better, a better place to live, and encourage people to come back and help agriculture continue to be that main economic engine in those communities. But so before we wrap up, y'all have any last words? And Patrick, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, thank you for allowing us to be a part of this conversation and to get our voices in Redwood County on a national platform. And um, I think just to take a minute to speak to, um, what is it that young people are looking for, and what is it that rural communities can offer to young people. And I think there's just different opportunities in rural areas than there are in cities, and these rural communities have different barriers to entry, and there's different barriers that are removed in rural communities than are in the cities. And I think with a program like this, I had a lot of my friends look at me and they say, Patrick, what are you doing going to live in a community of 5,000 people on the Minnesota prairie? And to me, it really comes down to the people and the risks that I'm allowed to take here in that experience that I'm able to chase. And you know, uh, I was just out in Chicago visiting some of my college buddies, and they were advertising gig cities. And so gig is kind of your high speed internet. It's the top tier. It's the top of the line. And I kind of found that curious because in Redwood County, we're looking at making a gig county. And with that, I think, we're looking to take places of nostalgia and turn them into places of innovation, progress, and growth. And I think, having mentors and the way the American Connection Corps is set up, it really allows you to, as a young person, to take risks, to be okay with awkward or difficult or hard conversations, and to also really buy in to a community and to be close to that problem. I think that's something that's really valuable, is being on the ground, living in these communities, participating in these communities. And having this network of people here that want to see you succeed and in your corner is invaluable. Having these committed community partners, having Land O'Lakes, having Farm Bureau, having Mayo Clinic, all these, they're fantastic partners to be advocates with. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Patrick. And Bruce, I tell everybody in my community, I said, that's a fine young man. Says, we got to find him a good wife and get a couple of children in his house and get him a debt. We'll have him good then.
I think there are a number of people that have been working on that project.
Well, he seems like a fine young man, and so I want to go to you, Bruce. You got any last words, whether it be agriculture or leadership?
I think we could talk about a lot of things for a long time here, but on this subject, as I've driven all over the state of Minnesota, and you drive down the road and you go through one community that seems to be thriving and doing pretty well, and then the next place down the road is basically drying up. And if you look around and it's seemingly the same resources, it occurred to me more than likely the difference is the decisions that somebody made somewhere along the line. So as a community, and decisions were made to do something or not to do something, to act on something, and I don't know what all the circumstances were, but I don't want to be in one of those communities that dries up and goes away. I don't think I am. But it takes a lot of people to buy into the same vision or a similar vision. And then the next thing is it takes action. And there's a line in the FFA opening ceremony, and it states, without labor, neither knowledge nor wisdom can accomplish much. We can talk about a lot of things, and we can have all the smart people thinking about it, but at the end, somebody has to actually do something. Somebody actually has to put in the sweat equity, and somebody has to make things happen. And so if we can get the combination of all of that working toward a goal, I think it's amazing what you can achieve. And if you look back, a lot of times the vision is just the beginning of it, and what you actually accomplish can go way beyond that vision. So if we want thriving communities that have opportunities for everyone, no matter who you are, where you come from, what you look like, what you want to do, as long as it is for the good of the community and society, I think there's a place for you. I think rural communities can be those places if that vision is articulated in a way that people can get behind it. And so by having people like Patrick and other leaders in the community all pulling together, really cool stuff can happen. It's a lot of fun.
You're exactly right. When I was county commission chair, it was amazing when you got a community behind a project, how it really comes together. And there are some very tough decisions to be made, and some of them become very controversial, but to be able to see what might be in the future takes bold steps. And I think that goes back to what Patrick said, be bold today so we can be bold tomorrow. I think that's great. So thank y'all both, Patrick Garry with American Connection Corps, and Bruce Tiffany, who is a farmer there in Redwood County. Thank y'all for being with us. I want to thank Land O'Lakes for spearheading this project that I think is going to touch many, many communities across America and set an example for other communities as to what they should be doing to see what their future ought to hold. And I would remind everybody that's listening that, if you have questions or topics you want to talk about, whether it be Farm Bureau, Agriculture, Rural America, we'll try to find that for the Farmside Chat. But Farm Bureau is here to help make sure that vacuum for leadership is filled by through our leadership development programs with young farmers across America that I'm a product of. We also work real hard on mental health with farmers and ranchers or rural communities through our Farm State of Mind project. And we try to make sure that agriculture, the farmer and rancher in rural America has a voice. here in Washington, D.C., driven by that policy that our farmers and ranchers bring to us each year through their policy development process. So thank y'all for joining us today. Patrick, I wish you all the success in the world, because that would mean that Redwood County is that, what'd you call it, giga community?
Gig County.
Gig County, okay, Gig County. And Bruce, I hope you have a great season of planting, growing, and harvesting in 2022. Thank y'all for being with me, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Farmside Chat. Please be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, take a minute to rate and review the podcast. This helps us continue to bring you farm fresh content that everyone can enjoy. Until next time, thank you and God bless you.